Hi everyone, my name is Bob Callanan and I'm a principal here at Business Ready Solutions. I'd like to thank everyone for joining us on today's call to look at some of the new functionality in Microsoft Dynamics GP 2013 and to discuss how it can impact the effectiveness of your finance team. A quick overview for those not familiar with the value BRS provides to its clients. We operate as an extension of your finance and accounting team, which allows you to focus on your core business. From accounting system selection and implementation, custom integrations to month-end close, account reconciliations, and data entry, we get and keep your financial systems running efficiently and accurately so you can make informed decisions and remain business ready. For today's webcast, we have over 20 callers on the line, so I've muted the audio, but if you have questions, feel free to type those into the chat window and I'll answer them as best I can during the call or with an email or phone call afterwards. So the functionality that that Microsoft has added to Dynamics, it's come from user and partner feedback, and I know working day to day with our clients that a lot of the functionality that we're going to talk about today we've seen requested by our clients over the past year, so I think you're going to like what you see. For the presentation, I'll be showing you a few different scenarios that highlight both the foundation enhancements, the things that are consistent throughout the system, as well as some of the module-specific enhancements that have been included. I won't be able to show you every new feature and functionality, but I do hope I can hit most of them. So again, if the modules that I'm showing you aren't relevant to your business, do pay attention because those foundation enhancements will be relevant to everybody. With that, let's get into the demo. So everyone should be seeing the main screen of GP right now. I'm going to jump in and starting off, what we're going to do is we're going to look at a typical workflow around purchase order entry and the subsequent receipt of product. So from the home page, I'm going to jump over to the purchasing window. And right away, you're going to see some basic differences in how the purchasing series and the other windows look. We still have our pallets as we had before, but now we can move them around, reorder them, and emphasize certain ones. So right now, the transactions palette is emphasized for me, so it's listed up at the top. If I was working under cards, I might click this maximize button and it would switch places. The cards would go up top and transactions will come back down below. So now I have my purchasing cards up top, my transactions put away, and I can toggle that back and forth if I need to. The other nice thing that we can do here is if there are certain palettes that as a user you don't use at all or very often, you may not want them even on your page. So we can now customize just the purchasing page to include or exclude certain palettes. So maybe I don't ever use the routines palette. I can remove that. I've already removed setup and utilities. And when I do that, now I'm just down to 4 palettes to work with on my screen. That's by user and by company. And it can be changed on the fly as you work with the product. So it's really up to the user to decide what they want to see there. Okay, so let's get in and let's start a new purchase order in the system. So I'll choose purchase order entry. The majority of the window does look similar to what you've seen in the past. I'm just going to go ahead and create a new standard purchase order. So I'll tab through each of the fields. I'm going to choose A1 Consulting as my vendor. I have project accounting turned on right now, but I'm going to tab past the project number field for this particular purchase order, and I'm going to choose my item. Now, when choosing the item, I'm going to use my looking glass because I want to show you some changes to the lookup windows in GP. If you notice, right now, my view is set to exclude inactive inventory items and to sort by short description. In previous releases, it by default always sorted by your item number field, and so now we can customize that again by company and by user. And to do that, if I clicked on the word item number, my list now sorts by item number. If I like that option or view, I would click the drop down and choose to save that as my default view. Now if I go back out and go back in again, you'll see that my default is now to exclude inactive items and sort by item number. So for this, I'm just going to choose my RAM to order. I'm going to order 100 of them. I'll leave the price as it is and have it go to my main warehouse. Okay. Another feature around inventory with that item is the ability now to attach documents. In the past, you had a note button, and that note still exists, where we could click in and enter some notes about a purchase order. We could attach a single document in there, but it wasn't presented very well, and it was especially difficult to use if you had multiple documents to attach. So what has changed now is we have a doc attach button at the top of the PO entry window, and we have one next to the item if it's specific to that item. So if I want to attach documents related to this item on this purchase order, I should say, I can choose the button, and I'm presented with the doc attach management window. I can click attach, look out on my server, and I can choose a picture, for example, and add that as an attachment. I can also add the Word document here or any other types of documents that I might need to do. Okay, so I've just added these two documents in here. At any point in time, I can highlight that and click Preview and see that document. The same holds true if I want to attach documents to the actual purchase order. So if there's a document, a confirmation coming back from the supplier, you might want to attach that document in here as well, and then that would then serve as reference internally in the system for you to look at moving forward. Notice the icon does change after you attach that document there as well. Okay, so that's doc attach. I see a couple of questions. I'm going to stop right there. What's the difference between QuickTag and attaching documents? That's a good question. QuickTag does a lot more routing of those documents. If you notice, that document I just pulled off of my local hard drive and attached it. With QuickTag, they can come in as email. They can come in a lot of different formats. They also go to a document server. QuickTag uses a separate document server that you can actually access those documents from outside of GP as well as inside. So QuickTag is a much more robust document management solution than what we're looking at here. This is if you're just doing ones and twos and not too much. But if you want to incorporate document management into your entire system, then QuickTag is still going to be your solution for that. And as far as emails go, no, we can't do emails as attachment with this functionality. And yes, you can detach or deactivate the attach feature. It is an option that you can either allow or not allow as part of your setup. So if you don't want to use it, you can easily just disable it. Okay, good questions though. So the next thing I want to talk about in the PO entry window is the prepayment function. So this is a new feature. Typical scenarios might be you're entering a purchase order, you bought some Dell computers, or you're buying RAM like this, and they need to take a credit card for this transaction. You don't have terms with that vendor yet. Now we can enter that prepayment. So I'll tell it that we want to, we're paying the entire $15,000 on our credit card. I'll open that up. This is going to be a manual payment on my credit card, and I'm going to use my Platinum card to pay for that, and press OK. So now I've got a payment assigned here. When I post this or save this purchase order, that payment will post to my subledger, and when the invoice comes in, that payment will be matched up against it. I did a credit card here. I could also have it automatically generate that computer check if I wanted to do that, or I could do a manual check. So I've got all the options right there. Very similar functionality to what you have when you do a standard AP transaction in terms of cutting a check on the fly. Okay. And then the last thing I want to show you here is what happens after you finish entering this. You might want to print your purchase order. So I'll go ahead and choose the print icon. Saves my document. We'll print it. I'm just going to print to the, I'll print to my printer. And I get a new window, a long-awaited window. This is the window now where we get to choose what printer this goes to. In all the earlier releases of Dynamics GP, you had to choose your default printer before you started the printing process. If you remember, go back up to purchase order entry, choosing File, Printer Setup, picking your printer to make that happen. Now you get this printer option as you're printing, so you can pick any printer as you move along. So I won't print at this point because I don't have a printer assigned to it. I do see a question back there, back on the credit card number. GP does mask the credit card number as you enter it. After you hit save, it is masked. If you've got questions about PCI compliance, probably want to take those offline a little bit. There are some ISV products like Notice and others out there that do a much better job with PCI compliance and would send that credit information if you were using your card off to a payment processor, if you were on the other side taking that money back in. Okay, so that's the PO entry process. We saw a number of different features just within that one area. Let's now look at the receipt of that product. I'll print out my reforms. So going into receiving's transaction entry now, we'll receive that shipment. Choose auto receive. It's the last PO in my list. I'll receive it. What I want to show you here is that we ordered 100, and let's suppose during receiving they counted and found 120. In the earlier releases of GP, that was not a problem. You could enter more than what was ordered on that purchase order. But now we get a message. You can't enter a quantity greater than the combined total of the remaining to receive, which would be the 100, and the overage tolerance set up for this item. So overage tolerance is a new functionality in GP. What it allows you to do is, per item, decide what that tolerance is going to be. So if you have vendors that or suppliers that tell you, if you order 100, we're going to make a batch, and you may get 100, you may get 110, 105, and you agree to accept whatever that might be. This functionality allows you to do that within a certain tolerance and not go above that tolerance. If you leave it turned off, it will let you receive as much as you actually get. But if you want to set up tolerances, you can do that now in the system. And I'll show you where that is. I'll zoom back to item maintenance here. So now when we create our items under the purchasing window, we can specify quantity tolerances. So for this particular item, I have a 5% tolerance for shortages and overages. And so what that means is that when I'm receiving the item, if I receive 120, that's more than 5% more, I get the message. If I receive 104, it's below, and it lets me continue. Okay, so that's the new quantity tolerance feature. I know I've got some clients out there that have been wanting that for a long time. Okay, that's it. At that point, you would save and post that transaction. I won't move forward with that transaction. I just wanted to cover the quantity tolerance there. So again, we saw a number of features through the PO process. Let's delete that for now and change gears just a little bit. Back under financial, there's a routine that a lot of our clients are using quite a bit, which is the Reconciled the Gl feature. It came out in GP 2010, I believe. And what the Reconcile feature did for us is for two of our subsidiary modules, accounts receivable and accounts payable, it generated an Excel spreadsheet that helped you match the transactions that it found in my general ledger with the transactions that existed in my subsidiary. And then it attempted to match them, And then it also gave you a report that told you which ones were potentially unmatched and which ones it could not match up. And that, as a user, allowed you to go in and dig a little bit to figure out what caused the modules, the subsidiary module, to get out of balance with your general ledger. They've expanded on the reconcile features now. First of all, we've got more than just 2 modules. We now have the inventory module, and we have bank rec. If you choose bank rec, you could choose the individual checkbook as well. The other thing it does with this is, let me bring up an existing one here. After you run it, it keeps that summary for you. So on the spreadsheet, after it generated, it was sometimes difficult to figure out what it was actually telling you in terms of the out of balance. They presented us with a nice, easy summary on this window of what my beginning balance was in my subledger and what my ending balance was, what my general ledger has beginning and ending balance, and what that difference is. So right away you can see the difference there even before you go in and explore with your spreadsheet. So again, that's the reconcile functionality, 2 new modules there. The spreadsheet itself, I won't generate it now because it will take a minute to run, and I don't have enough test data to really show it, but the spreadsheet itself is formatted the same way it was before, so there are no changes there. Okay, next we're going to jump over to accounts payable for a little bit. And what I want to look at over here first is around voiding transactions. One type of transaction in particular happens quite a bit with clients that deal with credit card processing. If you recall, in GP, a lot of users will, let's say like the example before, they place an order with, say, Staples or Dell, and they use their credit card. What they'll want to do is they'll want to enter the payables transaction with Staples being the vendor, but they're going to pay it on a credit card. So let's create that invoice for us right now. Let's say we bought office supplies. And I'm going to buy them from, actually I'll just keep buying from A1 Travel or A1 Consulting. Invoice number. So we're going to buy $150 of supplies, and I'm going to put it on my credit card. I'll use my Platinum card again, and I'm going to enter for receipt number. I'm going to put A1 just so I can find it quickly later on. A1 credit card. Okay, we enter that. Again, my distribution here is as what you'd expect. Posting this transaction, if you recall, it's going to create the invoice for A1 Consulting and show a payment so that this invoice appears as though it's fully paid in the system. But at the same time, it's going to create a second invoice for my credit card vendor, Platinum, which is Woodbridge Bank, I believe is the name of the vendor. There'll be an invoice out there that I can use to help reconcile my credit card statement when it comes. So I'll go ahead and post this now. And close out. I won't do the reports as they come off. And so if I go ahead and look at inquiry just to show you what's out there now. I have my $150 invoice here, and I have my $150 payment. So that invoice has been paid in full for A1. But if I look at Woodbridge, or Woodgrove, I now have an open invoice, document number being A1 credit card for $150 that is unpaid. So when my credit card statement comes in, I can reconcile against that just fine. Now, in earlier releases, the one drawback to this process was what happens if the credit card statement comes and we find out then that this wasn't put on the credit card. This was actually done with terms, and we're going to get an invoice, or we're going to need to pay that invoice to A1 Consulting. In the past, what I would need to do is I would need to void this payment or this invoice from my bank, from this vendor, and then turn around and also void the payment on A1 Consulting. So I had 2 transactions to void to get them out. And oftentimes we'd find clients doing one and forgetting to do the other. And it did create some out-of-balance issues with when reconciling accounts payable. So Microsoft has simplified that some now. The void process, if I simply void the $150 payment from A1 Consulting, what did I do? If I simply void the one payment for A1 Consulting, it will take care of my credit card vendor as well. So I'm going to go ahead and void this transaction right here. Don't print, don't print. And now if I go back and look at my transactions, A1 Consulting now has that $150 invoice that is now unpaid. And Woodbridge, my credit card vendor, or Woodgrove, no longer has that invoice. That $150 invoice has been voided at the same time I voided the payment for A1. So we've skipped a step in that void process with GP 2013. A couple other things that happen around the void process here that I'll go back in and just show you here. One new feature is the warning around reconciled. So occasionally our clients will attempt to void transactions, checks, for example, that have already cleared the bank. And I can't give you good reasons why a client might need to do that, but we do run into it on occasion, that they're trying to remove something from the system and they've already accidentally reconciled it, whatnot. This window now will tell you whether this transaction has been voided or not. So right away you'll know if you're potentially creating an issue by trying to void something that has already passed through the bank rec module. It will still allow you to do it, but at least it gives you some indication that, hey, I've got to do something separate to fix this problem within my checkbook because that transaction has already cleared and moved to history inside of my checkbook. So you'll see that additional functionality in there. One other thing it's done, I don't have an example to show it to you. If you had a scenario where you, let's say you enter an invoice for $1,000, you process a credit memo and apply that credit memo of $200 to the invoice, and then you enter a payment for $800. So we've got 3 transactions, the $1,000 invoice, it's essentially paid in full with an $800 check payment and a $200 credit memo. All of those go to history for us. If you needed to void that payment for $800, the process has changed slightly in terms of what the system will do when you void. In GP 2010, when you void the payment comes back to open. The credit memo stays in history. So it would force you to have to void that credit memo if you needed to pull that out. In GP 2013, when you void that $800 payment, the credit memo comes back to open as well and allows you to then reapply it someplace else or potentially reapply it to that invoice. And the benefit there is that in some cases you're trying to back the whole thing out, the payment, the credit memo, and the invoice. And to back it all out, you've now got multiple transactions to move from history and open. In GP 2013, it's all simplified. The invoice or the payment gets voided, the invoice goes back to open, the credit memo goes back to open, and you can deal with it as an open transaction much easier. Okay. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to start to touch on our 1099s. 1099 windows have changed, or the functionality has changed a little bit. We've added a new window called Edit 1099 Transaction Information. As all of you probably recall, when you are at the end of the year running your credit, you're running your 1099s, the big challenge has always been, we added a new vendor this year, we forgot to flag them as 1099, we sent out a few payments and then turned it on, and so now we need to manually go in and fix fix a certain vendor to get the 1099 balances to be correct. And in some cases, we just end up taking it all to Excel and doing it outside the system. So it tended to be a pretty time-consuming process. So with GP 2013, we've introduced the Edit 1099 Transaction Information window. And what we're able to do with this window is simply pull up a vendor, and it will show you all of the 1099 transactions that are currently flagged as 1099. If I want to look at all the transactions in the system, I can toggle to all debit transactions, choose redisplay, and now I can see all of my other invoices in the system that at the time they were entered were flagged as not 1099. I can simply go in here and fix those manually by telling it that invoice should be box 7. I would need to fill in the amount there. I can drill back and get that amount if I need to. But we go back. Actually, that was a $0 invoice. We go back and we choose each of them, set them all to miscellaneous, and process. The system report prints out an audit trail so that we can see what it was before and what we have it set to now. And now that vendor is ready for 1099 processing. Likewise, you can go back the other direction as well. If you wanted to, if you flag somebody as 1099 and realize that they shouldn't have been, you can come back back in and say this, or maybe this one transaction should not be 1099. You can flip it back and run that as well. So that to me is going to be a nice new feature because it is going to cut down tremendously on what we see in terms of the time it takes to get 1099s completed during the year. Okay, next we're going to go and jump back into inventory. And let's go back over here. Another area that users that have inventory on their balance sheet probably find extremely helpful, or one of the issues they find extremely important is the ability to keep up with inventory adjustments. In an ideal situation, you buy inventory and then you sell it all. And the only time your inventory goes up is when you buy it. The only time it goes down is when you sell it. In the real world, there are other reasons why inventory tends to shrink. And as an inventory manager, you're trying to minimize that as much as you can. In GP 2010, you had inventory transactions that you control those other adjustments to. You could either increase or decrease and then manually control the GL account for where they went to, but you really couldn't enter any good reasons for why these transactions were being processed. So what we can do here, we can enter a transaction to adjust some inventory. And let's go ahead with the green phone as an example. So if I know I need to adjust inventory for my green phone, I can now include what's called a reason code. I can build my list of reason codes the way I want them. I've got 3 as an example here: internal use, samples, or shrinkage. When I choose a reason code, like samples or like internal, and tell it that I'm going to remove 2 for internal use, the distribution is set for me. So this is going to be charged to supplies for the accounting department. Had I chosen shrinkage, my distribution is my shrinkage or waste account. So now with a simple reason code, I can control where these go to as far as different types of expenses or reasons why these are going out of my inventory. In setup, actually let me show you something else before I get there. This pop-up window is because the item is tracking serial numbers. I moved 2 out, and I need to choose my serial number. Another quick new feature in here around serial numbers. In the past, to choose these 2, I would need to insert, highlight one, insert, highlight another, and insert to get them both over there. Now what I can do is I can use my control key and click on the 2 of them and insert at once, or use my shift key and do arrange if needed. With 2, that's doesn't sound that exciting, but if you've got 50 to choose from, using your control key to pick and choose will be a huge time saver for folks. So we'll insert those 2 and press OK. Now let me get back and look at this reason code for you. So this reason code, to set it up, all we're going to have to enter is where we use it, adjustments and variances. I can control when I can use this reason code, increase only, decrease only, or both. So if I have office supplies, for example, you may not want to be doing increase adjustments for that. You only want to do decrease adjustments. And again, here's where I control the posting account for those as well. If I want to use reason codes for item transfers or in-transit transfers or item bin transfers, I can do that as well. But to me, it's the item adjustments and variance adjustments where this has the biggest impact. So we'll hit save on that, save on that. Now let's post that as shrinkage, and that posts. And so now if I go back and look at a smart list, under inventory and inventory transactions, I have a list already set up, basically listing all of my inventory transactions with the reason code listed there. So I've got 2 in my list there. That's the one I just did a minute ago. Pulling this data out, over a period of time and analyzing on a reason code gives you a really good snapshot of what your inventory shrinkage looks like and the reasons why it's happening, and lets an inventory manager focus on the real issues there as well. Okay. Continuing to move along, let's look at batch approval. I know this is becoming a bigger and bigger request hearing, so I think GP has addressed some of it with a new release or with some new features here. I'm going to go look at inventory transactions for a minute. And let's create a batch of transactions. I'm just going to call this test. Call it test 2. And take some general journal entries. I'm going to add 1 journal entry to my test. And we're just going to do an adjustment between finance charge income and interest income. So we'll just do a reclass there. And we'll save that. Go back to my batch. Now right now in this setup, I have batch approval turned on, so I can't post this batch unless somebody approves it. So I'm going to go ahead and, I entered it, I'm going to go ahead and approve it as well. When I approve, I am asked for a password. So I'll need to know the password to approve it. I'll press OK. And the ID that approved it and the approval date is displayed. So the system administrator approved it today. When I post that, it's finished. What's different about that process now is, in the past we could mark the approval, enter the password, it would display who approved it and the date. The problem is that the person that approved it and the date was never saved anywhere in the system. So once it was approved, that information was gone, it was lost. They're now capturing that data and storing it on the transaction. So if I go back into my smart list as an example here and look at financial, I've got my GL transactions. I've got to pull that approval code from a smart list builder report because it's not yet available on my standard smart list. But I can get a list here. I've got one built already of GL transactions that were approved by the system administrator. And we'll see the one I just did in here, $400 reclassing between 7010 and 7020. Okay, so those two are there. Again, that is only for GL batch approvals. It doesn't apply to sales order batches, purchase orders. It's just that GL batch. Okay, I've got a question in. Somebody wants to know how to turn the approval feature on, and that's a simple setup option under Tools, Setup, Posting, and Posting. Today, and this is true in GP 2010 as well, anywhere in the system, if you want to require batch approval, that's an option right here. So you can require approval anywhere in the system. It's only in the GL that we are starting to capture the user that actually did the approval process and the timestamp. Okay. And I see that question someone just asked in about timing around this. So at the end, we'll get into timing around the upgrades. I will tell you that this upgrade, we are today upgrading clients to this release. And you just need to be on a current maintenance plan to take care of that. So we can definitely schedule time to do that for you when you're ready. So that's the GL approval process. I'm going to jump over now into fixed assets for a minute. There are a number of things that have changed in fixed assets. I don't have time to go through every one of them. But the big one to me, because we saw this happen to clients this year on more than one occasion, I believe it's under routines. Yeah. The big one is running depreciation. Each month when you run depreciation, it takes a long time to run, and after it's finished, if you realize that you want to undo it, there really isn't a good, easy way to undo depreciation unless you go in asset by asset and reverse that depreciation. Well, now in 2013, we have the ability to reverse depreciation right on the main depreciate process window. So if you run depreciation and realize you need to back it out, you just come back to the same window, reverse it, enter that date from the previous month, and choose the book and reverse, and it will back that entry back out again. We had clients this year where we spent as much as 10 hours helping them reverse a depreciation that they made at year end. With GP 2013, they can do it themselves now. A couple of them nice features. I don't know that I'll have too many clients that will be using this under fixed assets, but there's also a new window for intercompany transfer. So if you're moving assets from one entity to another in GP, you can enter the destination entity, transfer a single asset or all of your assets over to that new company, and it will basically treat the transaction as a sale in the source company and an asset, and create the new asset in the destination company. So it does all of the entries that you need it to do to make that happen. So again, that's the asset transfer, intercompany transfer process. And one other thing in fixed assets I'll show you quickly is under cards, we now, as you add fixed assets, can optionally, you don't need to have this turned on, we can optionally auto-assign the asset ID for you. So if you want your assets to start with, I have BRS 1001 as my next database. If you enter that, then the next asset you add will be 1002. So you can turn that on and have that start to go. Just saw a question come in regarding the inter-company transfer of fixed assets. Yes, that does go from a SQL database to another SQL database. So it does step outside the system. It's not to a different division or department within the database. Okay. Again, there are definitely other features in the system at that point, and I'll show you the document that you might want to review to look at some of the other things, but I've hit the ones that I kind of like the most so far. I'm now going to take you into two other areas that kind of sit outside of GP that I wanted to introduce you to that are becoming more prevalent with GP 2013. And the first one is called Business Analyzer. Business Analyzer is it's a BI tool, again, comes standard with GP, and what it presents to a user that is not running GP are any or all of your SRS or SQL Server reporting services, reports you have designed or developed, or using the canned ones to a user in a small application that they can run. These reports refresh automatically if you set it up that way. You can control through security which reports each user can see. And so if I click on any given report, here's a gross profit report for the past 12 months. Again, these are all pre-written reports that you can take and use out of the box or modify or design your own. So a user can click their way through on a regular basis to see whatever data it is that they need to see. Here's a cash position this month to last month for cash. They can change the data if they want to look back and say, what did this look like? I'm working in 2017, but if I do 03, 31, 2017, if I can type. Oops, let's try that again. I have my numlock turned on. No, that report is not working right now. I'm sorry about that. You can also run full reports as well. So if I view this report here, this is an AP aging. This takes me right out to SQL Server reporting services where I can generate, I believe this was a AR aging report. I can sort by vendor ID and run the report that way. There it goes. So if you're not used to the reporting services reports, I will emphasize that, again, as we move forward, we're going to see more and more of the standard GP reports moving into this environment. So with 2013, we'll definitely want to get you set up with reporting services, getting all these reports published out to you, and getting you used to using these reports. So again, this is an AP aging. It can essentially replace the AP aging you run out of GP. It can be customized with anybody that understands how to use reporting services, which is a pretty standard industry tool now for report writing. And again, the nice thing is it can go quickly out to Excel if you get that form properly, and it's in a web browser, which means anybody outside of GP, if you want to, can access and run that report. Okay, the other thing we're going to look at is the new web client. So with GP 2013, if you notice I'm in a browser now, I can actually log in to GP. And actually to do this, I need to exit out of my full client so that it will let me in. But starting with GP 2013 from a web browser, I can now access and run Dynamics GP. There are some limitations at this point. Let me see why that's not running for me here. There it goes. There are some limitations in terms of what tools and what windows you can and can't see inside the web browser. So if you are seriously thinking about starting to use this, we will want to have a discussion offline about whether you want to use this. You can use them both, so you can have some users working in the full client and other users working in the web browser. You can have a user that goes in from the office and uses the full client, but from home might want to use the web browser to do some basic inquiry and some other things like that. But what you'll notice is after you enter your Windows or your domain login, you're right back presented with what you're used to seeing for a Dynamics GP SQL login. So I'll log on as, for now, I'm logging on as the system administrator. I'm going to choose my GP company that I'm working in, just Fabricam. And while that's loading up, someone asked a question about Business Analyzer replacing FRX. Just FYI, FRX has been discontinued. So GP 2013, you cannot use FRX with. 2010, you could still optionally use it. With 2013, FRX is gone. But FRX is being replaced, or has been replaced, with Management Reporter. That's the financial report writing tool. It has a very similar look and feel to FRX. It's got some new functionality in there. It does run on SQL, so it's 64-bit enabled as well. So if you haven't started looking at MR, I'd urge you to start reviewing that right away. Business Analyzer is new. It's replacing, I guess you could say, potentially replacing some of the functionality in Business Portal for query writing and report writing. But it is a separate new BI tool that takes the reporting services reports and puts them in a nice, easy application for an end user to work out of. So logging in the rest of the way into GP, if you notice, I've got a reminders window, a very similar look and feel to the full client. My home page, financial. I can run my reports from here. If I go to sales, again, as examples of things you can and can't do. I can't create or maintain my customers. So if I attempt to open the customer window, it says this window is not available in the web client. So you will see those pop-up messages as you're trying to get comfortable with this tool, but I can enter quotes and orders through sales transaction entry. Again, the customer would need to exist for me to do that. Over the next subsequent releases, we'll see more and more functionality get introduced into the web client. But today it is somewhat selected. Most of the basic things are there, but certainly not 100%. If I pull up an existing quote, let's just grab this last one here. Again, very similar look and feel to what you're used to in terms of where the individual fields are in the system. One thing that I kind of like, I almost wish it was in the full version. As you're entering the items, you do lose the more info button for item number, and instead you're presented with an item detail tab instead. But again, all the same information that you saw before, just a different button to go get that information. We'll go ahead and save and back out of that. Oops. Okay, so that's the web browser. Okay, a couple of questions that I'm going to back up and try to address right now. For using Business Analyzer, the Business Analyzer requires what's called a light user to access. So it's not a full GP user, it's a light user, it's a discounted price. I can get you that information offline if that's what the direction you want to head in. Most users already, or most companies, when they purchase GP, already have a set number of light users. So most of you already have some out there. Just a question of how many more you might need to use. Is the reporting in the web client? Yes, all the reports that you can run out of GP standard, you can also run out of the web client. I definitely would lean toward the reporting services reports to do that, though. And then Report Manager, This is getting back to Kelly Baker's questions. Yeah, I can't remember Report Manager. I think that was a tool they introduced maybe in GP10. It probably is very similar to Business Analyzer. I believe that has gone away and been replaced with Business Analyzer. You may see some similarities. I never got that deep into Report Manager or had clients that were trying to use it. And then a question regarding electronic banking. There are enhancements to electronic banking. I didn't have them set up for today. The big one to me was the settlement date can now be dated in advance. So I know we've had some clients with banks requiring a settlement date to be 2 days in advance of the transaction date. So that is now available. And yes, they've expanded it to include more of the standards set by the banking industry to be compatible. So those are the big changes. Also, printing remittances. If you do EFTs and you'd like to email your remittances in GP 2010 and prior, you couldn't, or you had one shot at printing and emailing your remittances. Once you posted your batch, you couldn't go back and do it. Well, now you can go back and print and email your remittances after you post your payables checks. So saves a lot, I guess gives people a lot more comfort that they can get things out the right way after posting. Okay, so that's the web client. So let me jump back now. Again, if you've got questions, yeah, VAI2 format is exactly what's being introduced. I'm going to mention that. All right, let me jump back to our presentation here. And so a couple other things to think about here as I start to wrap up. Collections module and extender. If you're using those two modules today, Microsoft, both of those solutions were acquired, or not acquired, but were licensed by Microsoft from the developer. So Collections module was initially developed by Professional Advantage. Microsoft started selling it for them maybe 10 years ago. With GP 2013, that relationship has ended. Professional Advantage is now going to be selling the Collections module direct. So if you're using that module actively, you probably are already getting messages from Professional Advantage. If you're not, let me know. Professional Advantage, I saw the demo of that at Convergence this spring. They've got a major release coming out to the Collections module that definitely brings it up into, I guess, what I would call a good, solid product. Hadn't been changed in a long time. So there's a number of enhancements coming out with that module to make it work easier for you. If you're using it and you have it today, nothing is going to change when you go to 2013. You will still own that product. Professional Advantage will honor that license that you had, or the purchase you had before. The only difference is your enhancement plan will now, some of it will be paid to Professional Advantage, and some of it will be paid to Microsoft, but the net amount should be the same. And the same goes with Extender. Extender came from E1 Solutions, the maker of Smart Connect as well. So moving forward into 2013, you will see an invoice from E1 Solutions and a lesser invoice from Microsoft regarding Extender. Also in general regarding pricing has become much simpler as far as GP is concerned. Today, when you buy GP, you can buy what's called a starter pack, which includes all the core modules plus 3 users, and the cost is $5,000 plus enhancement plan. So a very low entry into the product today. If you wanted to add the advanced distribution modules or add project accounting and manufacturing, that's a $10,000 fee to do that. Additional users are $3,000 each. When we license you for GP 2013, we'll go over that with you. What generally is going to happen is that everyone is going to see new modules or new functionality added to their current system when they switch to GP 2013. If you bought the system 7 or 8 years ago and all you bought was General Ledger and Accounts Payable, and you move to 2013, you're going to get a 3-user license. If you had 2, you're going to get a 3rd automatically with no extra cost. You're going to get all of the core modules that you didn't have before. So It does give you everything. You're not going to lose functionality when you move. You'll only be gaining, and your enhancement fee will stay the same. But adding users moving forward will be under the 2013 pricing, so you may see that either be higher or lower depending upon where you were at beforehand. Other things, if you're interested in reading more about the what's new in the module or in GP, there is a what's new guide. Just drop me an email or drop Amanda an email, and we'll forward that PDF guide to you. It's about a 30 or 50-page document. It's got everything I talked about today in there, plus a few more things. Check out dynamicsuniversity.com. There's a number of articles and things written about GP 2013 there that you can read about to get up to speed. And also, don't be afraid to try this. myerpcloud.com. It's a hosted GP solution. You can get a 30-day trial copy of GP 2013. No obligation. You don't need to provide a credit card. They will set up a whole test environment for you. You can get in there, play around with it, and then after 30 days, drop it, and there'll be no fee for it. So definitely give that a shot if you want to get your hands on it in advance of an upgrade. If you are interested in upgrading, just let us know. What we'll do is we'll put together a planning document. We'll review your existing environment, put together a scope document, get a budget ready, review the system requirements with you, look at any customizations or integrations that you have to make sure those are going to move forward properly. Once we have that in place, we'll give you the project plan, and then we just need to schedule. So let us know how you want to move forward with that. Just an FYI, in wrapping up, next month we'll do another webcast. It's going to be around best practices for month-end close. Hopefully I'll see all of you there. And again, any follow-up questions that you've got for today, drop Amanda an email or drop myself an email. And in wrapping up, thank you guys for attending, and look forward to hearing from you. Thanks.